trade paperback, flocking to the
I am joined by the amazing Allison O'Toole, Dan Price, Andre Owen, Fred Kennedy, Chip Zdarsky. Chip, thanks for coming. What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and today we're joined by Anna Peterson. Anna, thanks so much for your time to come on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely happy to have you. So just to kick it off, the same question I always like to ask for the folks at home who've maybe never seen your face, never heard your name, who is Anna Peterson?
Yeah, that's always a tough question, isn't it? So I guess I grew up in kind of a desert of comics. Comics wasn't a big part of my life when I was growing up. It's a town without a stoplight in the 90s and 2000s. Is not really going to have much of a comics market.
Yep.
So I guess I kind of grew up more with kind of really loving film a lot. I originally wanted to be a filmmaker. I tried it and realized I wasn't particularly fond of being on set. And if you make films, you kind of have to. So I realized I really love storyboarding. That was my favorite part. And then some of my friends and roommates, kind of college years, they were really into comics and manga. So that was kind of my introduction to that. So I felt like I was kind of a late bloomer in terms of my comics education, but I really just fell in love with it and just kind of grabbed anything that I could find after that.
Nice. I like it. And when would you say, what year, what time did you start reading comics and getting into it, roughly?
Probably 2007, 2008. I moved to where I live now in 2008, so probably just before I moved up here. But yeah, before that, I didn't really have a lot of experience. There wasn't anybody in my teeny tiny class that was into it, so I didn't have any access to it. And the internet exists, but it was shitty dial-up, so you're not really gonna have a lot of choices on that. So
Absolutely. I still remember the horrid sound of that going off, or the unique experience, if you've ever run into it, of picking up the phone while someone was on the internet and the sound.
Yeah, we had that all the time.
Good times.
Yeah.
Of course, Anna, we're here to talk tonight about your new comic on Kickstarter now, Rifters. What is Rifters?
I guess the short tagline is it is a group of interdimensional bounty hunters that has to kind of confront their personal past issues as they start to rise to the surface, as they're simultaneously realizing that there is something very, very wrong going on in the background, and having to kind of join together to go at that.
Right on. And very happily, I'm going to bring the page up. The campaign, it is Canadian, mind you, Canadian dollars here. But
I saw it at first. I was like, "Oh man, it jumped up again. That's great."
My apologies. But you are officially past your funding goal by, in Canadian, $35. As I understand it, this is, if not the first, one of the earlier campaigns that you've ever done, correct?
It's my first campaign, yeah. So I've never done a Kickstarter before. So
congrats, that's amazing.
Yes. I was very happy. I initially, well, it still is a 3-week campaign, but a lot of people I knew were only doing 2-week campaigns, and I kind of assumed that I'd maybe get a couple $100 the first few days and then just spend weeks begging people for money. So I was like, I'll just give myself some extra time and really grovel. And then I didn't expect it to do as well as it ended up doing.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I guess for the folks at home, like you said, it's about this group of time-traveling bounty hunters. What, other than, it lives in the realm of sci-fi, what kind of story can people expect from the first issue?
The first issue is, so it does start as mostly a flashback. Each character kind of gets their own little, I call it book. So
Okay.
John's book is it shows a little bit of what's happening in the present and then cuts to him in the past. And he lives in seclusion in a monastery, doesn't really have any outside connection to the world. So the first book is there's not really a lot of dialogue because there's not a lot of talking, but he can read everyone's minds, and not having any access to the outside world in the 1700s in a monastery, being able to read everyone's minds, obviously not going great. So it's probably the issue that's going to have the least amount of interpersonal interaction, because he's not really talking to anybody, he's just hearing what's going on. So I think in this case it's probably the most like visual and kind of taking in his environment. And then I feel like issue 2 is going to be nothing but talking. So you're going from not very much talking to all the time, because that's when you get to meet all the other characters as well. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, but this one is just very focused on his on what happens when he first basically when he first meets them, essentially, like right before that.
Okay, cool. And I guess given it's a first issue and you're introducing your characters, your world, your concepts, and obviously being a first issue, you want to give people enough to sort of latch on to and be interested in, but not, divulge the big secrets. I find it fascinating that you would want that first issue to be, like you said, minimal dialogue, because from a storytelling standpoint and from like, obvious low brain cell count here, thought process, that limits sort of what you can learn about your protagonists. What made you want to go with that way and tell that type of story?
I think it was just like really kind of experiencing that sort of isolation and taking out his ability to talk to people. I mean, he physically can talk to people, but just like where he is, he can't really have a conversation. But I just wanted to have it kind of show what his life, how like isolated he found himself, how just difficult he had it. And I felt like having him talk to people was going to not really help with that. And I know it is kind of harder not having as much dialogue, but I feel like doing all the stuff I worked with film and trying to tell something without saying it did help a little bit.
Oh, I imagine absolutely it would. Like, I find the approach to a first issue like that, automatically for me, that gets me like, oh, this is interesting. It's a different approach. Because having read as many comics as I have, whether they're indie comics or from the major publishers, everyone's like, oh, that was a really good first issue. And I'm always telling people, give it 3 issues. If they can hold you for the end of the third, good story. If the first one's really good, the second one's not so much. But given the challenges you're presenting for yourself, and the apparent fan interest, which is fantastic, it just sounds like a really interesting setup. And I guess when it comes to how you're letting people get to know John, the protagonist, through those non-dialogue based interactions, I think it'll be really telling, because you'll see how he gets to react to people being able to read their thoughts. It just sounds really cool.
Yeah. So, and there is also stuff happening kind of just outside of what's going on with John, because there is stuff happening in the background with the characters. You just don't see a lot of it right away, but you will see eventually what's happening in the background. And you just see like little glimpses of it, what he's not catching kind of far away, but it kind of helps see more than just exactly what John's seeing, and kind of adds a little bit more interest to what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. So I guess the next thing then, Anne, that I was really curious about is, we'll go this way. So we've still got 2 weeks left, which is fabulous. So people can go and get in on this. Maybe you can do stretch goals or something. I'm not sure what the plan is, obviously, but you've had a heck of a response. What has been your reaction to that? What kind of interest have you seen from people? And how has that made you feel?
I mean, obviously it's great. It was definitely better than I was expecting. But I just think, I think having it, because this is the first comic that I've written and drawn and putting out that's just mine, but I did have a little bit of a background with like submitting to anthologies and being in a few projects previously. So I think that kind of helped me work my way up to this a little bit. But yeah, no, I think the comics community is really great about sharing and like cheering each other on. Because a lot of the comics people that I meet, if they have something cool and you have something cool, like we'll basically just wave it up in the air and be like, everybody look at this thing that this person made. Like I feel like they're very receptive to that, which has been great. And comics can be really isolating, especially if you're doing all of it yourself. So it's really nice to have, to see people who get excited when you're excited about something.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know what? That's, I think, a part of it that maybe doesn't get touched on a lot in my show, particularly just because so much of what I do is about the comics community, people coming together. And often the teams that I'm talking to are a writer, an artist, maybe a color, a letter. So there's a whole bunch of people here. But yeah, like I think it is important to note that this is all you as far as right. Like that's a big undertaking on its own.
Yeah.
And yeah, that amount of work is insane.
I do think that if I do generate a decent chunk more than what I've already got, if I get to like a stretch goal or something, definitely that money is going to go towards probably getting somebody to help me a little bit issue 2, because yeah, it is kind of insane doing everything yourself. I really would not recommend it to somebody starting out. If you can find somebody to help you, it is worth it's worth it. So
I love it.
Anytime you can get help. I think a lot of people are afraid to let go of creative control. Mine was more just like I didn't really know how to write it as a script so that other people could draw it, because I'd only ever had to write it for myself. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Huh. Did you find, like, when you were writing it, because of your background with film and storyboarding, were you from the get-go picturing it like panel to panel, or were you mentally sort of, this is a script, this is a proper, like a book maybe, and then it evolved into what it is now?
I think I kind of wrote it when I first wrote it. I wrote it as like almost like a TV style script, and I was like,
Okay.
it's really cool as an animation too. So I kind of had that idea of what it would look like in my head, and then as sort of reality set in of how difficult that is to do, and also that I wasn't particularly thinking of continuing down the film path. I think I had so much that I had done for just kind of like test footage and for plotting out stuff and
Oh,
storyboards
okay.
that honestly, like I could kind of take that and use that as a jumping off point, but it was not a one-to-one. It wasn't like it, I took it as like, okay, I've got this kind of baseline of visual ideas, but when you convert that into comics, it's not a one-to-one translation between a storyboard and a comic. They're not the same. So I think it started out as panels, but then it kind of worked a little bit more so that it flowed on the page, so that what wasn't needed was cut and what was missing was added. Just it was nice to have that as a starting point, but it definitely kind of evolved from there, I think.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's very cool. I One thing that has continually come up throughout all of my interviews almost is folks much like yourself who have a background in film, and so when I talk to them about like how does that background impact comic book storytelling, like, oh, well, when you storyboard, you think of it sort of visually, you think of how the framing would be on the shot. And so when you're thinking of a comic, so I'm always interested to hear different people's perspectives from that perspective of film into comics. It's cool.
I think one of the most difficult things, and things you don't even realize about translating it, are there's a saying that 80% of, or 20% of film is visual and 80% is sound. You just don't realize it. And so you're all of a sudden, you don't have all of that extra sound to give your audience more information. I mean, you can obviously, there's, you know, word balloons, and you can write sound in there, but it's not the same. It's not the same as film.
Yeah.
So, and also because there's lettering now, there's going to be text on your image. That is also going to affect how people are viewing the story. I did some lettering for a book came out for Comixology a while back, and it was the first time I'd ever lettered for somebody else, and trying to make sure that everything was flowing properly, not going on somebody else's art. Like it's dialogue really does make it more complicated, and I think it gets really undervalued, and some people just slap it in there, but it's like, no, if you don't do it right, everybody will notice.
Oh God, yeah.
So I think just getting used to not having sound, especially because I really love horror, so sound is a huge part of horror, obviously. And then also having to get used to text being essentially physical because they're reading it anyway. Yeah. So I think that's definitely something that I needed to really get down when I was doing comics.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Like, one of the things that I enjoy about doing what I do and getting to talk to people just like yourself is hearing people's approaches, the mentality that they have to storytelling, to the medium of comics that I love so dearly. So yeah, just to get to hear you sort of elaborate very eloquently about the sort of the challenges of that and describing it for people out there watching who maybe themselves are into film currently, and they're like, I could kind of maybe make a comic, and now to have that from you might help them be able to actually just go and do it.
Yeah, it's really great to have that experience, but I think if you come from a film background and you're like, oh, I'm gonna just jump right in and make my magnum opus, it's like you might want to read a little bit more about comics and like practice and go and apply to other things and talk to people. Because there's a lot of stuff that, you know, I know now that I didn't know 10 years ago. So.
I'm sure of it. And sort of to touch on that, and specifically dialogue boxes and leading the eye and how important that is. For anyone out there who's new-ish to comics, if you haven't yet read Watchmen, one, Watchmen is satire. So for the folks at home, it's not supposed to be the pinnacle of superhero. It's satire. But the way that the creative team did dialogue, internal dialogues of thought, but then also I'm forgetting the term for it, but basically when they explain this in a situation that is clearly not a thought or character speaking, allows you to do some cool stuff. And yeah, like when you have word bubbles, you have to lead the eye so perfectly well while attempting to not cover up someone's art that they've painstakingly made, which I'm sure you're acutely aware of now.
Yes, for sure. I realized in the second issue that'll come out, it's going to be an even bigger challenge because the word bubbles for what people are thinking and the word bubbles what people are saying are going to have to be different, because sometimes they're going to be happening at the same time and you can't make it so confusing that nobody knows what's going on. So it's definitely something I had to kind of like tweak around and figure out how to convey that in a way that made sense. Because when I was writing it as more of a script that was like a live action, people were going to be talking, I didn't have to worry about that because you would just hear it. But then all of a sudden, you gotta read it now, so you got that extra thing added into there.
Fascinating. Anna, I am excited for this series. The idea of you're able to have a character who can have a conversation like we're having, and
Mhm.
then also hear what these people are thinking, and you're going to be able to display that at this. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Uh, keep at it, please. Um, that being said, we're at about 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So what I like to do around this point in time is let people know sort of the minimum buy-in, and then what sort of the crazy big options are. So
Mhm.
I'm going to bring up the campaign here, and can you walk us through, like I said, the minimum buy-in for people who just want to get the least expensive version,
Yeah.
and then some of the different options that they've got.
Yeah, well, obviously the least expensive is going to be just buying the digital copy. Definitely had a lot of people who, really wanted to support and didn't know if they wanted to do a physical one, or people who are like, I live in another country and shipping is not cheap, so I want to have something that I can enjoy without having to pay all that extra money to ship, which is fair. So that'll be the $10 option, and then second option is digital with a physical copy. So you get pretty much any tier you get, you'll get a digital copy regardless.
Oh, cool.
And then yeah, the physical copy as well. I think we're right now shooting for it to arrive around May, which sounds on track. The only thing is, I know the company that prints it, they are in between moving facilities, but it sounds like they haven't had too much delays involved in that, so it should be about on time. Yeah.
Sweet. And on that end of it, really quick, Anna, you are with Lesser Known Comics, correct?
Yep.
Awesome. So good friends of ours. I've had many of the folks on the show, and if I'm not mistaken, they're still currently working with Comics Wellspring, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, kudos to them, and good luck on their move. I
Mm-hmm.
hope all goes smoothly. So yes, like you said, digital and physical. It's the 15 US with an end or a goal to be in people's hands by May. Awesome. What else could we get?
I think there's 25. So that one I'm working on a 17 or 11 by 17 poster, and I'll be posting that when it's finished up. But I for sure want to have one um, that's mostly finished. I have an idea for another one, but I don't want to promise that and not be able to do it because I don't want to. I can get excited about an idea, but then doing it's a different reality. So yeah, it'll be a poster. It'll be some. I always like to make my promotional posters and stuff look cool, even if you don't know what it's for. So I'm going to try to make it. It's not going to have like my logo splashed all over the whole thing. It's going to look like something that could stand alone as a piece of art without being attached to the comic.
Cool.
So yeah, as soon as I have that up to date, I'll get that on there. And then $40, all that fun stuff. Also a oh my god, what's the word? Sketch cover and a variant cover as well.
Right on. And you've already got two folks on there. And then last but not least, I think, right? Yeah.
And then all that other good stuff, plus a sticker pack. And I designed, there's kind of a little unofficial logo for the group that's going to be an enamel pin as well.
Love it. People love a good pin.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, and one of the things that caught my attention about you, and I found very interesting, and I'm gonna pull the campaign down here and bring us back over here. On your Instagram, one of your tagged posts or pinned posts is of your art, but what I wanted to ask about regarding your art was your style. So here, I will share this. So this is your Instagram, and
Yeah.
this. So when I've gone through it and looked at, actually, I don't think I've yet shown it. Let me jump back there real quick. So people have seen the really cool banner that you've done.
Mhm.
But the actual interior art of the book looks like this.
Mhm.
Solid stuff, cool colors. What's not to like, right? And then, when you sent me over the information for the interview and I got to check everything out and I started doing my online snooping that I do, um, I saw this and my brain immediately went, hold on, because you've got 8 different styles here almost that are all really unique, that are visually quite separate. And yet I dig them.
Mhm.
So
I know those are they are slightly out to date. I didn't really make one this year because all I really did was work on rifters this year, or this last
fair.
year. So I didn't really have. I try to put a little bit of variety in those, but yeah, I mean, I guess they're kind of different because they were for different things. One of them's for an anthology I was in. Another was just, or two of them were just kind of art prints. The ones that look a little bit more painted, those are art from art prints. And then there is one of just the line work right above that Sandman one. Yep, that one is from Rifters. And then there's one kind of on the top middle from a kind of like a horror western, and then there's one that was just it was kind of just for fun. So it is a little all over the place, and I have been warned that things like portfolios don't look good when you can't stick to the same style. But yeah, I don't know. I think part of it too is because when I was going to school, I did go to school for fine art, but I did very like traditional like realism, like painting,
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff like that. And when I graduated and I was first starting to put rifters together and try to draw the characters, I realized I didn't know how to draw from my head. I've been drawing my whole life, and I didn't know how to draw from my imagination because I'd never done it before. So I feel like when I'm drawing from my imagination, I tend to play around a little bit more. And also, because I'm
Ah.
drawing digitally, I don't have to worry about like if I mess this up, then I just wasted all this time or I waste all this money because I can just delete it.
Controls D.
So I feel like I'm a little bit less concerned about it, looking perfect when I can just delete it if I don't like it.
Yeah, and I mean, what caught my attention about it was just how different and yet, and my apologies if I lack the language to get this out, but each of those are fairly different, and yet within that style, that look, it's consistent. Like it is each of them look really good as what they are, and when you pull back and go, wait, that's the same person doing that. That's really cool. And I guess what I wanted to ask was, and I appreciate this is a year ago now, so you have probably evolved over doing rifters, but which of those would you say is your style, or is that no longer a relevant question because now rifters is like,
Mhm.
yeah, what's your take on all that?
Um, I think if I'm drawing comics in black and white, I will go so hard on shadows. There will be so much black. It will barely be any white. Like it will just, I will go to town on black. If I'm doing something in color, there's almost no black whatsoever. So
Cool.
I don't do a lot of shadows when I do things in color. So I would say if I was going for uh, if I was going for what is my comic style, it's probably the middle far right. But I think the kind of like the uh, Jinx and Vi on there,
Yeah,
and
from
then
arcade.
Sandman down there. That's probably like my painterly style. That's kind of more left over from college when I was physically painting rather than digitally painting.
Mm. Okay, that's so cool. Like something that comes up frequently, whether it's at a panel that I am either in or am watching, or just doing this, is like the idea of your style, how your style of art evolves and all that. Um, and I really dig that, Anna. You That's super cool. Um, I guess my next question for you then is, when it comes to rifters, yeah, you know what? When it comes to rifters, given it's you want in people's hands in May, I'm assuming it's not yet completed, correct? Like the book itself.
The book itself is basically done. I'm pretty much just kind of putting it together to send to the people who then put it together for the actual physical book.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's done. Like, it's not, I'm not still. I'm going through and looking and making sure that I didn't spell stuff wrong or anything, but it's essentially it's done.
Awesome. Okay, cool. The reason I ask is sometimes people are afraid that, oh, my apologies, my dog is upset with me. I will be right back. Actually, you can probably still hear me. The reason I ask is often I find that when people are new to Kickstarter, when they've never backed a project before, or they're not familiar with the artist or the collective that they're looking to get the comic from, when the book is not done or whatever, sometimes the fear is, well, what if it doesn't actually get made? What if the artist doesn't finish it? So that's why I just like to ask. I love it when the book is either in that finalized, cross the T's, dot the I's, make sure we didn't leave anything weird in there stage. Just because, yeah, it lets people relax and just go, oh, the book is already fully funded. It's already basically done. They're just spell checking. Cool. So that's basically why I ask.
Yeah. No, it is. I think it is nice to finish it, especially if you're doing it by yourself. If you don't have anybody to help you, I think it's really definitely nice to have it finished before you try to ask people for money, because I know I definitely got delayed a lot more than I thought I would. So I think it's good to have it done if you can have it done or as close to done as you can before putting it out there.
Beauty. And you know what, for the folks out there, the hopeful artists who are maybe embarking on their journey, which you've just sort of completed, what advice would you give them about putting pen to paper, either from the end of writing it, from the end of drawing it, or I guess stylus to tablet perhaps? What advice would you give?
I don't know. I always feel like I have a terrible time with like giving other people advice, because in my brain I'm like, I don't know how I got here either. I don't know. But I think, yeah, I think forcing yourself to push outside of what you're comfortable with drawing, because there are a lot of people, and I was guilty of this when I first started, of having like very, very good very well drawn characters that are basically floating in space because they don't want to draw the background, or they don't know how to draw the background, or they are really expressive in their face, but their hands are basically just like gloves that they're wearing. Like that, yeah, there's not just expressions in your face. Your whole body is expressive, and the environment that they're in plays a huge part on that too. And I think a lot of people focus so much on their characters because they are the most fun part of it. They're the funnest thing for most people to draw. But I think, I wish when I was in school I had done more with like learning to draw architecture and stuff, and like paying more attention to how to draw things in the rooms. Because I feel like it kind of sucks having to learn later in life how to do all of those things.
Fair. Fun question, because it comes out of stuff that I've asked and heard asked at cons and stuff, specifically sketch duels. Anna, have you yet drawn a car or a horse?
I have drawn a horse because I did have to do horses for a Western. I haven't drawn a car, but I did have to draw a kind of like Akira style motorcycle. So that's probably the closest I've come to a car.
It's a vehicle.
So, but yeah, it was tough. Yeah.
I've been told and understood that specifically with horses, they're so hard because if your anatomy is off, that they just definitely don't look like a horse.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, it's you get one part of it wrong and the whole thing kind of falls apart. So
Fair. Awesome. Well, truth be told, Anna, we've gone through the hard stuff, so to speak. From here on out, it's pretty much just curiosity for my end, and getting people to know you. Because it's important to know the book and understand what it's about. I find also getting to know the artist is a good thing too. Actually, I lied. My apologies. I've lied. I have but one more question about the book. So this book is titled Rifters Book 1, Issue 1. Initially, for some reason, my brain thought, oh, so we're going to, instead of issues, we'll call them books. Cool. But this sounds more like you're going along with the structure of like Avatar The Last Airbender, where it's book 1, book 2,
Yep.
book 3. How many issues, if all goes well and people back it every time and all the good stuff happens, which I hope it does. But if all that happens, how many issues are you designing per book? And then how many books are you currently thinking?
So John might have an extra issue than the rest of them because you're getting the introduction to the world as well as the character, which is a little bit longer than some of the other ones were. So his is probably going to be, I'm assuming 3, and then I think everybody else will probably be 2. So each character kind of gets their own story, their own book. But it'll, because I think the beginning is going to be just a smidge longer because you're learning all this other information as well as John's. So I'm thinking his is probably going to be 3, but if I can think of a way to maybe concise visually a little bit without sacrificing the story, I'll probably try to get it done. It shouldn't go past 3. Fingers crossed. I don't want it to go past 3. So
fair. Okay. And then with that sort of structure in place, then there'd be 6 books total, right? Because one of each character.
6 books total, and then kind of like a finale epilogue, like a just kind of like what happened. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, break a leg, best of luck, all the good stuff. As mentioned, you're fully backed already, which is awesome. So as I mentioned, I'm curious about you, Anna. I guess what I'll start with is, and what I'm curious about is, you've got the background from fine arts, and then into filmmaking, and now into comics. And your art style very much feels like comic art. Actually, I'll bring up the banner again because it's so cool. I guess when it comes to how you draw and work out your paneling, how has the fine arts education influenced that? And then how has the filmmaking end of it influenced the way that you actually, like, pen to paper draw?
I think the fine art has probably influenced the coloring the most out of everything, because I tend to do I sort of do for the characters and the backgrounds two-tone shading, so like a shadow and light essentially for everybody, and then I will go in because I used to edit a lot of the like film projects that I would work on, and you basically go through and you make all of these layers of different of like tweaking the lighting differently. So I'll kind of go in and do that as well, to just kind of give it a bit more dimension while still keeping the comic look. Because like the background on this cover is like 14 layers. Like it was a lot of playing around. So I'll tend to use the kind of illustrative experience or the fine art experience of making the backgrounds feel kind of like they enrich it without kind of taking away from the focus of the characters.
Right on. Well, I will say to that point, like, you absolutely kill that. Given the sort of washed out light look of this one, maybe it's a bad example, but like this page, where absolutely just because of the way it's built, the way it's colored, the darker tones on the character, and also, by the way that you've blocked the panels to sort of pull to one side and down, beautiful leading of the eye. Because like, even if as a reader, if you start at the middle of that top panel, the direction of the footsteps just goes right to the character, and then you're, oh, cool, character, bust, and then down, and it's like awesome. So yeah, wicked. I did also want to ask a little bit about this. What's going on with this character?
So with that character, you'll definitely see a lot of background stuff hinting to kind of their role in the second issue. They don't make a huge appearance in the first issue, but you will definitely see you'll see them in the backdrop for sure. You just see them fully until issue 2, but they'll be there's a lot that ties in the first issue that actually comes it becomes huge in later issues when you actually see it from a different character's perspective. Like all these little things that are happening now, it's kind of like, ooh, what's this? What's happening? But like later you'll see everything fully and like what all is happening with them. So
beautiful. So this will be a series to reread, so that you can start going back and catching all the stuff once you've had your mind blown.
I feel like I don't remember where I heard it, but one of my favorite things that I've ever heard when it comes to like writing, whether it's graphic novels or books or movies or whatever, is always assume that your audience is smarter than you, and that if they're going to read it again, you need to have more than just a plot twist, because otherwise it's not going to be worth rereading. That's
good. I like that. Thank you. I'm stealing that. And what? So regarding sort of your art and your process, I guess one of the things that I wanted to ask about as well is for your use of color, because you very clearly you do it so well when it comes to even like levels of detail and everything. What artists, whether it's comic book or otherwise, have you sort of drawn inspiration from, stolen techniques from, whatever you want to call it? Yeah, like who do you look to? What do you peruse from? Who do you steal from? Go for it.
I know, I was trying to think about that earlier, because if you ask me who I really like, I can list you a bunch of ones, but I was like, who does my art who are other artists that my art reminds me of? Who did I kind of subconsciously like bring out? Which was a lot harder, because I can think of a lot of artists that I really love, but I'm like, I don't feel like my art looks like that. But I think probably my favorite artist that I guess I could see kind of influenced the way that my art looked is a Swedish artist whose name I butcher every time, but it's, I think, Zdislav Bensinski. If you just type ZDZ in Google, it will be the first name that shows up, and it's that one. But yeah, it's just, yeah, I have a tattoo that combines his painting and Dream from Sandman. So like, I love his stuff.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I feel like he has a lot of like almost alternate dimension vibes in his too. So I definitely dig that for sure. Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah. But otherwise, I guess I like a lot of really surrealist stuff that I don't know. I don't remember if I sent you my portfolio or not, or if I just sent you my Instagram.
Just Instagram.
Okay. I mean, all of my portfolio stuff is on my Instagram. It's just kind of spread around. But I have a lot of like prints that I'll do that they'll just have a lot of stuff going on in kind of like a I don't want to say like a dolly surrealist kind of way, but kind of like there's just a lot happening. I tend to like to put a lot of stuff in there, and then have spots where it's really busy and spots where it's really blank. But yeah, I feel like my comic art influence, that's kind of hard. Because I feel like all the comic artists that I really like tend to be really heavy with their inking, which I'm not. I guess maybe like some of the manga I read in college was a bit more influential because they don't really do a lot of shading to the same extent.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I was just thinking to myself, like, with the way that, like, on this page, the way that you've done the coloring of, or the different shades of, say, for all the robes to make this person sort of pop out, even though they're in a similarly styled robe, the color is very there. I find it visually interesting because where a very different artist might make them separate by using inks and make their tones the same, but just sheerly by inking everything and making it, you know, everything really dark, and then this person maybe less so. But I find the way that you use color is the way that I think other people might just ink. Like if you were to if Mike McNeil were to hand you a page of his art and go do your thing, color it, I'm willing to bet where he would take like a brush of Vanta Black and go, this doesn't need to be here, this is dramatic. You would probably color it.
Yeah.
Because it's just sort of what I'm seeing. Let me know if I'm way off base.
No, I will say one of the things that I'm the most excited about for issue 2 is that everybody isn't wearing a brown robe. So I don't have to keep drawing that because I was getting so sick of it by the end. So that I'm super excited for. But yeah, it is hard when everybody is dressing the same to make people stand out, because what is there to stand out, especially if you don't do a lot of heavy black line work like a lot of people. But yeah, I think the lighting was the thing that that kind of helps me the most when it comes to how I want my final product to look.
That's so cool. I always marvel at the different way that artists one, talk about themselves, because I know that is not an easy thing to do. But also like I said, the process. I am, as someone who is, maybe the right word is not willing to invest the time to improve my artistic ability, I am always in awe, just at how different people can be. What would you say then? You know, I'm curious about this because, like, sort of like me, you started later in life when it comes to reading comics and manga and all the things that we fall in love with. When you started, what were the books that caught your eye?
I think the first ones that I really remember reading were Black Hole by Charles Burns and Blankets by Craig Thompson. Those ones I remember. I don't know if those were the first ones that I read, but they were definitely on the earlier side. I remember them being like some of the first things I had on my, at the time, like baby shelf for comics, because I didn't have very much. But yeah, I mean, I also didn't read some of the bigger things that everybody's read till a little bit later in life. At this point, I've read, Watchmen, I've read Sandman, I've read, a bunch of the ones that like everybody knows. But I feel like between just random manga that I could get my hands on, a lot of which, looking back, I was like, I don't think they were necessarily the highest quality stories. They were just kind of there. It's fun to read, but maybe tastes have hopefully evolved a little bit. But
we all start somewhere.
Yeah. Trying to think what else. I don't know. I felt like when I was in college and in my 20s, I think I was I didn't really start getting into comics seriously until probably like maybe 26 or older.
Yeah.
And I think before that, I was really into more like traditional just novels, because I felt like my small town English department was really not great. And when I went to college, I felt super intimidated by everything that everybody else knew and I'd never heard of. And so I felt like I just read and read and read so I didn't look stupid. And then I think the same thing kind of happened with comics when I started getting interested, and I'd get these people who'd be like, "Oh, you don't know everything about Marvel that exists. Wow, I don't know what you're doing here." And so I think I just kind of started just grabbing anything I could find.
You know what? One, my apologies from the comics community to you. I let me be very controversial. I definitely think people like that should fade away into nothingness, like the 1990s posters on their comic book shop windows. But no, I think that's when you're starting out reading comics. I think reaching for everything, figuring out everything, whether it's maybe not the highest quality of storytelling or not, it's something. Like I can remember early on for me, because I had, born in 91, growing up with Batman the Animated Series. I'm a lifelong Batman fan. I've got him up on my wall over here. So I walked into a comic book store and I was like, everything Batman. If he's in it, I want it. And then like on the end of manga for me, the folks out there will not know this about me. I don't think I've ever mentioned it. But Love Hina. Was it Love Hina? No, Fruits Basket was
Fruits Basket. Oh yes. That was probably the big first series that I ever read. And also saw like when the original one came out. It was actually one of the first like my now husband and I watched together. That was kind of one of the first animes that we kind of watched together, aside from Bebop. So yeah.
Bebop classic.
Yeah.
I would love to see a comic book artist take on Bebop. I don't know if they'd ever license it and do that, but that'd be cool to me.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I feel like they haven't. I think the closest is I kind of always tie Bebop and Samurai Champloo together just because they're so similar. I think they did some comics for Champloo, but I don't think as far as I know, they didn't do Bebop, but I could be wrong.
I hope they do one day. I think you're right. Other than they had, when the Netflix series came out, I know that their comics were made for that, which is interesting. But that's beside the point. We're getting a little far away from you for my liking.
That's okay.
I guess we've got about 8 minutes left. Currently for you, who are the comic artists that you like? Whether you're emulating them or not, but what who do you pick up when you see them, and what is it about their art that you like or their storytelling?
Yeah, I grabbed a bunch of them before I came in here because I knew as soon as I got in here I would immediately forget. But I really like a lot of the stuff that Mike Carey's written. But I liked the Unwritten, kind of a favorite. I really love. I like stuff that's kind of heavily watercolory. And I really love Bobby and Moon a lot. So I really like Day Tripper. This one's one of my favorites. I think they made it into a Netflix show, but I don't know when it came out. Upgrade Soul. It's all written and drawn by the same person. And it's one of the most unique things I've ever read. It's got a really cool art style, which you probably can't see very well, but just Google it if you're at home. It's really cool.
Allow me. Add. Yeah, this is something.
I think they also made an interactive comic as well, that like when you go through it, it's got like little things in the background will move and there's the soundtrack. Like it's not like there's people talking, it's just like there's little things happening in the background too. which I've never done that one because I think it's only available on like Apple products. I don't think they did it for other stuff, but it sounds cool. And then
That's a trippy book.
Yeah, it's really, I would highly recommend it. And then I really love pretty much anything I've read by Ram V. This is my favorite, Severed Shores.
Right on.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever read anything by him that I didn't like, but yeah, the art in here is really cool. I really like vampire stories too, so that one. If you've never read anything by, I can never say his, I think it's Hanselman. You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen this one before?
I haven't.
Yeah, it's just these like crazy frenemies who live together in this terrible house, and they're all just kind of awful to each other, but it's one of those, like, I remember reading it and just kind of like a time where it was like not doing great, and it was so funny and I laughed so hard. Like I just picked it randomly and it was a good random pick.
What's the title of that one?
One More Year.
One More Year.
They've got quite a few books, but I think the most recent bigger one was Crisis Zone, which was about COVID.
Oh, that's fun.
But
whoa, you read some really cool stuff.
I will say this one is definitely not for kids for sure. So it's got a lot of adult stuff in there, so fair warning. And then this one's probably one of my favorites too that I reread recently. I loved it. Super weird, and the art is really cool, and the story is awesome. I just got it randomly a year or two ago, and I loved it. So
aren't those the best though, where no expectation, just cool cover maybe drew you in or whatever, and it just it lights your brain on fire the right way. I love that.
I would say probably the biggest one I ever had for that was Strangers in Paradise. All I knew was I saw somebody that had the t-shirt with the eyes, and I assumed it was an anime, and then I just like binged the whole thing.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's such a weird one. Yeah. Oof. That being said, Anna, we've got like 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
We've kind of covered the first of my last questions I normally ask, which is simply, what are you currently reading? So it sounds like you shared quite a bit with us. Thank you. I do want to recap quickly. Do me a favor and let people know the name of your book that is on Kickstarter now, as well as what it would cost them to get a digital copy.
Yes, you can check out my first issue, which is fully funded on Kickstarter now. It is it's $10 for just the digital if you want to go the digital route. Lots of other options too, but digital for sure. And yeah, I think it's closing on the 21st, I feel like, coming up in a couple weeks. So you still got a little bit of time left. So
beautiful. Well, thank you, Anna. And my last question, hopefully an easy one for you. Who do you think we should have on the show next?
I guess I'd give a shout out to Brandon DePillis, who is also a Minneapolis native. So I know he pushed my Kickstarter a lot, and his stuff is super cool. So I would totally probably get him on too.
All right, that sounds good. I actually believe, I could be wrong here, but he has sent me a copy of I'm gonna say this wrong. Autolit lease?
See, I don't think it's Autolease because that's how everybody says it. I feel like it's Autolice, maybe, because I think he said it's different than Autolease. But he would be able to give you the correct pronunciation.
For sure. But yes, he sent me a copy of it, so I could definitely check it out and have him on. And absolutely, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show tonight.
Yeah, thanks you so much for having me.
For sure. And for the folks at home, Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of Anna, what you think of Rifters down below. And we will see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter.